Oh, because it's getting bigger? Yeah, that's so exciting. Good morning, everyone. What? Cool, we got a pretty good amount of people right at 9. I appreciate it a lot. I told you guys I wanted to show you guys how to SSH into a server, so I've been spending like 20 minutes this morning trying to get mine to work. But it's misbehaving. I know we're all shocked by that. So, how many people got still saying 9? So how's everybody's day going? Yes, yeah, so Sarah says looked up how to set up a VPN and it doesn't look that hard. Yeah. Hell yeah. All right, got it to work. All right, excellent. So that's very exciting. It's probably not going to look that exciting to you guys, but I'm very excited about it. All right, I'm just going to share this with you guys so you can see what I am on about. I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like to SSH into a server. So you have that. So you guys have seen me like click buttons to access getting into my server to be able to log in and all that. So this is just how you do it from like your terminal. If you are on Windows, you have to use PuTTY if you're logging into a Linux server. But you know, other cases we get to do other stuff. So all it is just one little thing that I start with SSH, and then this little I says, hey, I want to use my key. I tell it, here's the key, and then I tell it to log in. And then it gives me a bunch of information and says you're logged in. And then I'm logged in as this user on my server, and then I can do stuff. Like I don't have a whole lot of stuff on the server. I think I'd have to cd var maybe. Oops. I don't remember what the top level folder is. Very sad. But yeah. So this is the whole point, is that using this private key, and there's a public key that's on the server, and it's our little friendship hearts, they match, we get to log in, and then we can do all of the stuff just like if I was logged into the server on the other side. I don't have anything super cool to do on my server right now. I just wanted to show you guys that like it does work, and this is the whole point. because then I can do stuff. And I'm logged in as like the root user too. So yeah. How do you find out your private key? That's a really good question. So you generate it. So in PuTTY, it'll generate it for you, which is really nice. And AWS will generate it for you too. And then connection closed. Yay, very exciting. Okay, no close that. So I wonder, make private key PuTTY. Because the way that PuTTY does it, I think is kind of entertaining. I don't know if this has screenshots. No, it doesn't. It has a little box. So remember that video with the lava lamps about like generating randomness to generate like keys and that kind of stuff? What PuTTY does is there's a little box and you move your mouse in the box and that randomness helps generate a more secure key, which is very cool. I was hoping it had like pictures so you can see the little box. Generate. Yes, give me. Yeah, and so then this is what it looks like, and then you move your mouse over here and that randomness helps generate the key. And so your server will have the public key and then your computer has the private key, and then it's kind of like logging in with a password. It makes sure that the password's the right password and it connects them. But instead of being like 10 characters, your private keys look like this. So they're like hundreds and hundreds of characters. And then we can also see a couple other things from this file. It tells us what kind of encryption it's using, if it's the private key or the public key. But yeah. So I just wanted to show you guys all this stuff so you can see what like it looks like when you're actually like doing this kind of work. This is what it looks like. I did also want to briefly touch about, I said RSA encryption yesterday. That's the standard right now. I did want to show you guys like what it actually does and what the little bit older standard is, because MD5 does still get used. Normally MD5 is typically used when you're trying to confirm that you're doing the right thing. So like let's say maybe you're purchasing software and you want to make sure that you're getting a legitimate copy of the software. There's sometimes a MD5 hash that you go to the software's website and compare it. And then if the numbers are the same, you have the appropriate version of the software. So we can be like, hello, this is the message. And then we generate. And then this is the hashed version of our message. And so then you can share that hashed version of the message. You could store it, and it's totally, okay, MD5 isn't like 100% secure as RSA encryption, but it's pretty secure. It's not too bad. The other thing that's really cool is because of the math behind it, if you change just a character, so all I did was add a comma. So let's see, it's like 9F68. So that's what it looks like right now. We add that, and now it is a totally different hash. So it doesn't look anything alike. Okay, groovy. Yeah, so this is normally what it's used for now is data integrity to make sure that you have the appropriate copy of what you're looking at. That's typically what it's used for now. And it's not like encrypting, but it's a fingerprint, which is cool. This is another thing that gets used a lot. I just wanted to show you guys that too. So you had that, and you can see me trying to figure out why it was upset with me because I couldn't figure out how to log in. So enjoy me Googling it. I didn't have the -I, so it wouldn't let me log in. It's okay. We're learning. I haven't logged in like that in like 6 or 7 months because I'm lazy. Cool. So I just wanted to like wrap up all of that stuff that we talked about yesterday. So like there's some screenshots of PuTTY. There's other encryption algorithms. RSA is like the one that's used right now. It's the most popular one. I'll spend a lot more time with the math when we come back from spring break, so I'm not going to bore you guys with it today. You can watch those videos if you're excited about it. I think this is really cool. You can also, one thing that I think is really cool is you can encrypt photos, and looking at encrypted photos is really cool. And then like watching them go through the process is really fun. Yeah. Cool. So any questions about SSH or SFTP? Not yet, yeah. Yeah, and this one, if they expect you to like SSH into a server, they're probably going to walk you through exactly what they want you to do. But having at least like a loose guideline of the steps will make you feel at least a lot less nervous about it and be like, I know how to do the thing. It's not too stressful. Just want to give you guys exposure to all of it and understand that like FTP is super insecure. Telnet is really insecure. And so if you're using those older standards, just be like, hey, is this the best idea? Do you wanna flip over to SSH? Because it's not that hard. It's really not that hard to switch over to it. And then you can help your job, not get compromised. And, if you get compromised and you're doing everything correctly, people are a lot less likely to be angry with you versus if you're, let people like, I store credit cards in just a text file and then you can FTP into my server. People are going to be upset at you. But if you're like, I use, state-of-the-art encryption tools and you can only get into my server with SSH, you're trying. People are going to be a lot less angry with you. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, in detail a little bit more about like what the process looks like for getting code that you're building on your local machine out into the wild of the internet. This is kind of DevOps. This is kind of back end, but it's also kind of front end because you have to be able to understand how all these pipeline processes work, but you don't necessarily have to be like an expert in it. And also not every single place has like a wonderful pipeline set up. So a pipeline is like our overall process to go from like, I built local code on my machine, I made sure it got tested, I made sure it's doing what it's supposed to, all the way to production. I have hiccups. So that's what our pipeline is. And some places have like a really good structured pipeline that has like formal QA and like there are a bunch of processes in place to make sure that things get automated and tested and compressed and encrypted, and like it does all of this processing for you so you don't have to do all that work manually. And then some places it's I uploaded a file to the server, I hope it works. And like startups tend to be a lot more on the like not really having a pipeline set up versus like more established places have a much more intense, rigorous pipeline. Like I don't think I'd ever go work for a place that doesn't have a good pipeline set up again because it stresses me out. But it can be intimidating to learn what someone's development process is. And so like if you go work for a company that has like a really intense development process and you're like, I have no idea what all the steps are, I'm so confused. Most of the time, the more intense a pipeline gets, the better their documentation is. Most of the time. There are exceptions to the rule, but most of the time, the better a pipeline is, the better understanding of all the pieces people have. so they'll be able to train you a lot better. Cool. So that's what a development pipeline is. Let's talk about CI/CD. CI/CD goes like hand in hand with agile development. It stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment, sometimes development. What that means, and this is why it goes hand in hand with agile, is we're continuously making tiny improvements to our code and deploying those tiny improvements to production. So instead of like saying, okay, I'm going to make an entire health infrastructure website, like I think University Hospital uses MyChart, instead of saying, here's that entire program, one go, I'm going to work on it for a year and just deploy the entire thing. You take little tiny steps and go, okay, so I made the part for the doctors to log information. I made the part for nurses. Okay, now I've made the client part. Okay, the doctor said that this part's confusing, so we fixed that. And you're just making these little tiny incremental changes to your code instead of huge releases. This is the bigger push in most development. I keep wanting to say like development houses, like they're like fashion houses. I don't think that's technically correct. Shops, I think is what normally people call them, dev shops. Incubators, the House of Morgan. Yeah. I do make costumes. Lots of fun. Okay. Most places are working towards this kind of integration because it can make you produce a lot of code a lot faster, and clients typically really like it because it's really responsive to what they want. Not everywhere has it, and it's a newer thing. Like I've even heard people be like, Agile's just a fad. Okay, so, you know, just be aware that like you can be up to date on like the hottest new, what exactly like is industry standard right now. And especially because we live in Augusta, people are going to be like, no. So I'll teach you that what's the hottest and newest stuff, but just, you know, be aware that especially in Augusta, you might run into people who are like, no, it's not important. All right. So this is just a little bit more information about it. I also really like this picture. It amused me. No. Yep. The biggest thing with CI/CD is not only that we're doing a bunch, but that every piece works correctly. So our big thing with CI/CD is reliability. So like, yeah, making the newest, hottest changes and updates, those are great, but like, you'll never push anything to production that is broken because you have all of these steps in place, which is really nice. Oh, sorry, I wanted to get my list and see if I'm missing anybody, because I don't think I am. Am I? I think I am. Okay, cool. All right. So CI/CD by itself is not like any kind of program. It's just like a methodology of producing things. We'll talk about some of the pieces that people use, but like you can use like NPM scripts to do a lot of this stuff. So like all the coding skills you already have, you can use all of those to build your own development pipeline. Delivery. I've also heard like deployments or development, but delivery is like delivering little final pieces. So, the big piece is version control. You guys are already experts in that, so that's exciting. Then we also will like, typically when you have a really good CI/CD pipeline, you also have a lot of automated testing. That doesn't mean you don't have QAs, because you'll probably still have to do manual testing too, but you can get away with a lot of automatic testing on both the developer side and then on the client side. And by client side, I mean like you push it to a server and let like Selenium run. And on the like developer side, that's things like Mocha, or what do you write unit tests in? Does JavaScript just, or does Java just let you write unit tests? Yeah, so if you're using Java instead of JavaScript, you can use like JUnit and stuff like that. But it's the same basic structure that we've seen with like Mocha and Chai, just across different programming languages. I just had the thought of I had no idea how to write a unit test in C#. I'm sure they exist. But yeah, this other thing is like infrastructure also has to match all of that to make sure that we have everything that we have working appropriately. So like typically when you're using the CI/CD line of like thought, you're probably going to be using like microservices, you're going to be using like load balancers and that kind of stuff. So everything's little tiny scalable pieces that can move quickly to change. And we'll talk about like what load balancing and all that kind of stuff is today. But yeah, so like this doesn't necessarily mean it's not like a set in stone, you use this tool, this tool, and this tool, and then bam, your CI/CD. It's a methodology that you work with your company to build out to figure out what's best. Again, mostly this is DevOps, but any developer will have to go through the process in order to get their code in. So it's important to understand whatever your business's process is. This goes into a couple things about like branching and feature flags and blah, blah, blah. Again, it's not just automatic testing. You also want to have manual testing from both your developers and your QA people. There's a bunch of different flavors of testing that we do. But yeah. The other really important part of CI/CD is it automates a bunch of the work for you. So like when I did DevOps, I had to do all of my work manually. I didn't have any processes set up to do my build for me. So like, you know, when you're in doing your little Heroku one and you say Heroku push, and then it starts to do that build process for you, I had to do a lot of that manually in PHP, which is, so having a good CD plan set up, it will automate a lot of that work for you. And some of that's picking what kind of tools you use. So like Heroku handled a lot of the build process for you. So that's part of your CD plan, is that you're using Heroku and it handles part of your build plan. Rolling back if things fail. Let's talk a little bit about some things that I think a lot of smaller businesses fail with. Part of it's version control, part of it's also having a plan for when things go wrong. So let's say you make some code and you get it tested and everything looks like it's fine, and then you push it to production and everything breaks and it's all on fire. Is that the time to figure out if your rollback plan works? Yeah, so when you're looking at building out these pipelines, you want to think about how it's going to fail and what you're going to do when it fails. Because like, I don't necessarily think it's ever an if. I think no matter how many people you have and how many things you try to make sure you don't have any failures, there's going to be failures. I mean, like, and think about like when Twitter went down for a couple hours recently and everybody was like, so even the biggest things can fail, so have a good plan for how things are going to fail. Test it before it fails. Cool. We'll talk about Jenkins. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about Kubernetes and serverless architecture, more frequent code deployments, which is exciting, especially for like, if you roll into a management role, one of the things that like for developers is really nice is being able to see their stuff in production. And so if you can do frequent code deployments, then you can show that back to your developers and then they feel motivated and happy because their stuff's in production and that's cool. So, yeah. All right. So that was a lot of like overview stuff. How do we feel about CI/CD? GTG, excellent, yeah. Again, and the other thing is I'm not going to go super in depth because the CI/CD processes have like a framework of what's best practices, but every single company is going to be like super unique. I've even seen like within companies, people's development processes are going to be different. And that's fine. It's just setting up what is the best things to do to make it quick to get to new code. So I want to talk about like one of the most popular tools for CI/CD, and that's Jenkins. There are a bunch of other ones. This one's the most popular one. I don't have any super things I want to talk about. You can use this for anything. It's an open source project. This is typically the tool that people use to set up their CI/CD pipeline. There are other tools. This is the most popular one. I don't super have a whole lot for you. I just wanted you to be like, you know, if you see Jenkins, you can be like, they have a CI/CD pipeline set up. That's cool. And you can play through it and look at it and like, they have pretty good documentation. It's all open source. But look, here's steps for Node and React with NPM. Have I used this one before? No, because when I did DevOps, it was just me. And so like I was really lazy and never set up all of my CI/CD stuff like I should have. And then when I worked at RSI, we did almost everything manually, which is probably why that contract's not at RSI anymore. But yeah. I just want to give you guys exposure to this and let you guys know what it is and all that. Maybe we'll play with this. It says this tutorial only takes 20 to 40 minutes. That's exciting. But yeah, I haven't used Jenkins before, but it's one of the most popular tools. I don't think it's super hard to learn. And again, geez, that's space intensive. I totally lost that train of thought, might be. No, it's totally gone. My bad, guys. That thought just left. But yeah, so this is the most popular tool for CI/CD. There are other tools, and everyone's processes are going to be different, but this is one of the most popular ones, and they have pretty good documentation and it's open source. Yeah, Chuck says poof. Yeah, basically. We only got so much space in the brain, and so sometimes they just like bounce. No more thought, head empty. Cool. Maybe I'll do like a live stream of this later and we'll work through it together, and that'll be fun. What's the difference between forking and branching on GitHub? That is a really good question, and let me look up the technical difference so I do not confuse you, because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. I think it has a lot to do with like ownership. Okay. Yeah. So when you fork something, you're just kind of like here's a whole new copy of it that I own over here. While you make a branch, you're still working off of the main copy. A logically independent project, which may never reunite. Yeah, so like normally you fork stuff. So like, probably, so Sarah asked, would you go back to the main branch if you forked? Probably not. You can. Normally what I do when I fork stuff is like I'm using someone's open source thing to get their stuff and then like use it for my own purposes, but it's never going to go back to the main project. Or like I want to pull one of your guys' projects and look at it and edit it and change it without looking at like what other changes you've added later. That's when I normally fork stuff. I'm seeing what I have pulled. So like I have your stuff pulled because I was looking at your code. I wonder if there's a way to see just everything that's been forked, because I want to see like one of the, nope. Oh, there's a whole section of forks. Okay. Whoa. Apparently clicked too fast. But yeah, so like, this is a bunch of guides of tools, and so I have a version of it forked so I can see it, but I don't have to like look at all their new changes and all that. And then like Bootstrap, I have a version of their stuff pulled so I can look at all their code. Versus like branches are just like collaborative little splits that are eventually going to go back, is the assumption. Do the branches go back all the time? Maybe not. But typically the branches have the intention of going back, while forking just makes a whole unique copy. So yeah, that is a good question. I'll put this in Slack for you guys too, so you can read it. But yeah, so the big difference is like forks are used when you're not going to, there's not a super intention of going back, and branches are how you work together. That's your code. Messy, lots of branches. I like this forking is more expensive. What it's saying is, when you go to merge something, you guys have probably seen this a tiny bit, it will ask you to look at the difference. Forking creates a whole copy, so you'll have to look at the entire code base for both versions and compare the entire code base. So yeah. Yep. So that's a good question. I'm glad that you asked that because I don't think we super talked about it. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Excellent. Oh, I sat with my legs crossed. That was a bad idea. I'm making a mess. Okay. Alrighty. So CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. That by itself is not a tool. It's just a methodology for making, it's one of the best software practices we can follow right now. Jenkins is a tool that can automate a lot of our CI/CD stuff for us in any kind of language that you use. There are other tools, but Jenkins is the most popular. All right, so I wanted to spend a little bit more time with some of the most popular cloud stuff. There are all those, there's dozens and dozens of them, like we do have like DigitalOcean, Heroku, Rackspace. There are a bunch of them. DigitalOcean has some really good documentation that's free. I highly recommend. If you're like looking at a server thing and you can't understand what you're supposed to be doing, the DigitalOcean documentation, it's written pretty good. But I want to spend time with the biggest ones. You do not need to be proficient in all of these. I would pick one and have that be where you're at. All of these have like a year free of stuff, so you can play with it and learn how to do it and like deploy stuff with it. Be aware though that these are all like businesses, and so they will try to charge you for every single thing. I think AWS does the best job of telling you exactly what it's charging you for, and like really like being like, hey, we're charging you for this. Do you understand that? Hey. Azure and Google just charge you. I think they're a little bit harder to understand when they're charging you for stuff. I think AWS is the easiest to understand what they're charging you for. I also don't really like Azure. I'm not really a Microsoft person though. So Chuck asked, what's the names for these types of services again? I guess in general, they would probably be called like cloud providers. Would probably be like the general cap level name for them. But most of the time, these services do so many things now, I don't know what else to call them, because they can do things like domain names, servers, cloud stuff. They can do your security stuff for you. So I don't know if there's like a good name for all these guys. I would say probably cloud providers is probably like the best top level name for them. But yeah, cool. All right. These are the three like big boys. I'd pick one that you're comfortable working in and just get their little free account and play and do their demos and all that. I will say the AWS demo documentation tends to be okay. Like it's not awful, but it can be kind of like dense if you don't know what you're doing. And that's kind of the point of demo documentation. But yeah, so let's take a look. So Google has its own cloud services. It starts for free. It also like lets you use all like their API stuff. So like if you want to put a Google Maps on your website, you can use this and all that. They do all your security stuff. I am already logged in, obviously. What am I doing? What was I doing in here? I don't know what I was doing. Why do I have an account? Cool. Okay. So this is what Google's looks like. Yeah, I think I've used it for their maps thing before is what I've used, but maybe not. Maybe it's just because I have a Google account. It's just like, hey. But yeah, so this is all the things it can do. So we have API and services. This is where, like for Google, I think this is where its really strong suit is, and like what I would use it for genuinely is all of Google's APIs. I don't remember what AIM stands for. Hang on. I should know what this stands for, but it's gone. Identity and Access Management. Okay, so this IAM is Identity and Access Management. That's a really important part of like doing your DevOps or like IT management, is like being able to confirm that the person's who they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be able to access. It just like totally left, so I wanted to remember what that was. But yeah, and then you can get little virtual machines, you can get storage, You can get fully managed databases, like all sorts of cool stuff. So this is what Google's looks like. For me, like the only thing I genuinely use it for is like the APIs, because there are like so many cool ones. So maps, machine learning, translate, all of the like Google apps have APIs, so you can do things like post calendars on your website, let it send you emails from your website, get YouTube analytics. Like this is what I would use Google for, is for all of their API stuff. But they do all the other cloud providing, so you can host your website there. I think you can also buy your domain name through Google, but that might be incorrect. But yeah. I think it's pretty easy to use. Google documentation's fine. You get the $300 of credit to play with everything before you actually have to buy anything, which is really nice. Yeah. So that's what Google stuff looks like. I don't have any projects or anything to show you guys in it, but yeah, it's not too bad. You guys have seen AWS a lot because it's what I use. AWS also does do all of their certs, and I think I put that link in Slack a while ago for the free code camp, showing you how to do all the AWS certs. If you're excited about like this backend stuff for DevOps, I highly recommend doing those, especially with all of the free resources now. I think the first test you still have to pay the $100 to go physically take the test, but that's it. So this is all the stuff AWS can do. So you can host your servers, you can host your databases, it has storage. The other thing that like I really like about AWS is it has all this weird stuff. So like you can buy satellite time, which is kind of crazy. The other thing that's really cool, where is it? This is one of my favorite parts of AWS's services is SageMaker. If you're interested in AI and machine learning, SageMaker is a really great starting point. It's not expensive. It's really easy to learn. Like, it's not bad at all. Like, it's easy to learn. It's easy to use. It's pretty cheap, all things considered. Like, you pay for computation time, and that's it. So, if you're interested in AI machine learning, this is what I would play with. Cool. All right. I think that's about it for AWS. You guys have seen me use Lightsail a lot, and that's just a hosted server instance, but typically you use EC2 is what most people use. And it's really easy to set up oh look, it's easier to use now. But yeah, so I don't have anything running, but like it's really easy to spin up a new server with Amazon. I'm sure it's just easy with Google and Azure, but I think Amazon makes it really easy to do. And then it has like a nice box right here, like, is this one free or not? And so like I'll just go through like what it looks like to spin up a free server. It tells you which one. You just go through the steps, and then like it gives you a bunch of things that you can ask about it. Yeah. This is the thing that I really like, is you can give every single one of your project a tag, and then in your billing that tag will show up and tell you what it is. So if you're managing multiple projects, you can be like, oh, this goes to this person. And so then you can be like, you know, Jeremy, why are you using so much money? And we got all of these. So it gives us a bunch of stuff. It's unhappy with me because I let it say that anyone can log into my server. Let's do a new key. Let's do testing. Oops. Let's spell it correctly. Download it. So this is AWS giving me that key pair. Launch. Let me go back. And now I have an instance. So what an instance is a server that exists. So and it takes a couple minutes, not too long. I'll show you guys this key because I'm going to disable this thing. I don't know. It's really angry. Interesting. But yeah. Cool. It'll take a couple seconds. Do you have any questions about like cloud services in general or other AWS questions? Cool. All right. So then what we can do is we can connect. And so it gives us a bunch of stuff like this that we can do, but I'm just going to cheat and be lazy. Actually, I guess we can do like what we're supposed to do. That was weird. Okay. All right, so I got to find that key real fast. Give me my files so I can see my key. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna move this here, and then I'm going to open this. So we do SSH-I, and that just says, hey, this is the information I want, testing.pem. I don't know what my user is supposed to be. EC2-user, is that what it's supposed to be? We're gonna find out. I don't think that's what it's supposed to be, but we're gonna find out. And then we spell things correctly, and then we figure out that IP address. All right, so Lexi asked, would you typically host a client's website on your AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, or have them get their own hosting? That's a really good question. It depends. If they already own their it depends. If they already own their stuff and they already have hosting infrastructure, typically you can just leave it on there unless it's really bad. Like if they're like on like a tiny HostGator instance and you're like, no, this isn't gonna work. It also depends if you want to continue to charge them for managing all their stuff. So if you want to do all like the management stuff for them, you can charge them more and then do that work, or you can have them manage all of it and you just deploy to it. So it depends on what you want to do and what they want to do. So typically, like if I was going to do it, I would give it all to them because I don't want to have continued work with them. I don't want to have responsibility for it. So I would put all of their stuff in their hands is what I would do. But some people prefer to manage all of their stuff. What would you do if you managed it? You make sure the server's up to date, make the breakup easier, I guess. Yes, exactly. Like I don't like long-term stuff. I'm very terrible. So when you're managing stuff, you're making sure that the you're paying for the domain name, you're making sure the server stays up to date, you're making sure any applications on the server are staying up to date, you're making sure that like the security certificate stays up to date, and so you're doing all of that work. It's not a lot of work, it's just, and you can automate a lot of it, but you know, just paying attention to it and making sure that everything is up to date and secure. Mostly just making sure things get paid for is typically the big thing. Okay, so let's see. So it got really angry with us, and it's like, this is an unsecured key. So this is saying that my file permissions are incorrect, which is fine. Tell me what I'm supposed to have. All right, so CMOD 400, that's fine. Yay, now we're logged in. So what it was saying is that we talked about file permissions yesterday. What it's saying that it can't have these weird permissions and be too open because that's unsecure. So there's no point using SSH if you're not making sure everything's secure. If you're on Windows, you just play with your PuTTY settings and fix it that way. But yeah, so now like we could do things, we could host a website on here, we could do computational work, you know, whatever. And now that's just how you launch a server instance and log into it with Amazon. It's not too bad. I almost always exit out too when I'm done. It's not like 100% necessary. Most of them will turn everything off for you, but you know, it's good to, you know, make sure that you're closing your stuff. All right, so now what we're gonna do is stop. Yes. We're gonna delete it so I don't get charged for it later. Come on, you started faster than this. How are you stopping? I think that's just as easy with Azure to do it. I'm sure all of them are just as easy, and like we'll hold your hand to set everything up. Okay, so now it's stopped. Terminate. Yes. Yeah. I'm just making sure that it turns all the way off so I do not get charged for it. This is one of the things that I think is, so Diane says 6 feet of distance, yes. Yes, lots of space. This is one thing that I think people, when they're managing their own accounts, forget to do. You're gone now? You done? Oops, 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 go back. I don't want another one. I just want to make sure it's gone. Go away. I think I'm supposed to do something else, but I don't remember what else I'm supposed to do. I want to turn it off. I want to delete it. Go back to the other one. Yes, go back. Yes. I just want to see it and make sure it's gone. Oh, I'll figure it out. It's terminated, so it probably won't do anything anyways, but I think I have to delete it also, but I don't remember how. All right. So lastly, I'm probably not saving the best for last, is Azure. Same thing, it's just Microsoft's version of it, so you can do all your Microsoft cloud solutions if you want to use all of their stuff. So like if you want to use SQL Server, you'll probably use Azure. there's Microsoft Teams and all that, and you can be all in that infrastructure. I don't know how much I have to say about Azure. I've never used it for anything. Use SAP. Okay, any question about our cloud providers? No. So the next thing I want to talk about is mostly just, not yet. All right, excellent. The next thing I want to talk about is Docker and Kubernetes. I've never used this in prod. Like, I've built tiny projects to learn how to use them, and that's it. So mostly this is videos I want you guys to watch so you have exposure to it. I just want to kind of hit all these vocab words. Again, this is like newer DevOps stuff, so like might not be what you're into, but I just want to give you guys exposure to it all, and then maybe you're like, oh, this is the piece that like makes it you know, exciting and fun. So when we talk about like microservices versus a monolithic structure, these are some tools we can use to make things really scalable. The basic idea is containers are little self-contained pieces of code that go inside of Docker, which is a technology that makes containers and copies them. And then we use Kubernetes to launch a bunch of instances of them to do that. That's like the basic idea. If you're there, that's great. I do recommend watching all of those videos. It's not a requirement. They're all like 5 minutes long. I would definitely watch them, and then let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, I don't super have a lot. Kubernetes does sometimes get shortened down to K8. I've also heard people say like weird ways of pronouncing Kubernetes. So, you know, if you hear anything like weird, like that starts with a K, that's probably Kubernetes. People mispronounce this word all the time. I don't know why. But yeah. So that was like really vague and just like a super top level thing, which is mostly all I really need you guys to know. Any questions about Docker or K8? Like, have you guys seen anything exciting about it, or are you just kind of like, okay, next? Next. Okay, great. Watch those videos. Slack me if you have any questions. Super technical questions I might not be able to answer because like literally all I've done is like go through the demos and be like, oh, I built a Docker instance on Kubernetes, great. Because I haven't really had a need to. Like when I did DevOps, I did e-commerce, and so it wasn't really like critical. But if you're doing stuff like, you know, like social media or like anything that's really content heavy, being able to like scale up really fast is important. Great. Alrighty. So that's week 8 done. Any questions about week 8 content? So that's like SQL stuff, Node, more SQL, some of the fancier parts of JavaScript, virtual boxes, Heroku, There's a lot. There's a lot of content. All right. So let's go ahead and do our break. Let's come back at 10:20, and then we're going to start week 9. We'll see you all then. Yeah, installing VirtualBox and then not looking at it is what most people do. This is not your group project. I'm probably going to actually delete this because that's not your group project and I don't want to confuse you guys. So don't worry about that one. All right, I will see you guys back at 10:20.